Good day, candidates. Today we're looking at paper 2 that was written last year. Very interesting question paper. And without the waste of time, I think you have this question paper and you have downloaded this question paper before. And let's look at the question paper that was written last year. Question 1, cost accounting. Remember, we are still on that concept of taking advantage of free marks. Paper 2 is too technical. And you can play around and make sure that you take advantage of these marks. Without any further waste of time, let's look at question 1, cost accounting. What was the question on question 1? Choose between column A and column B. I'm gonna leave 1.1 for you to complete it, and it's simple after you completed this exercise, so that provided you are unsure, but you have to go to this exam. You must be sure about your concepts. You must have done direct material, direct labor, manufacturing overheads. Those cost accounting are very important that you understand. Let's look at 1.2, Weza Stitches. Weza Stitches, owned by Annie Brown, manufactures bathroom towels, sets, and buys fabric from local suppliers. The information relates to the financial year ended 30 June 2022. Note that there were no work in progress stock balances, and you are required calculate the following for the financial year ended 30 June 2022. Direct labor cost, factory overhead cost, total cost of production. Those are the things that you must know by heart how to calculate them. And when you are given a question like this, 7 plus 6 is 13 plus 4, you must just take the 17 marks within 5 minutes, quickly. And we look at 1.2. Let's answer 1.2.1, and then we will look at the question as we answer the question. 1.2.1, direct labor cost, and I have also compiled a solution. The answer script that you're gonna be getting when you do this exercise. They're gonna give you the answer sheet, and the answer sheet looks like this. Where am I? The answer sheet looks like this. 1.2.1, direct labor. This is what is gonna be given unto you. Sometimes they don't give you that, so you must understand, you must know your format. Sometimes they play around, they give you that, they don't give you this, they give you this, they don't give you that. But if you understand direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overheads, you are good to go in terms of cost accounting. Therefore, we're looking at direct labor. We look at the question number A, and I like them. They put them formally because number A will speak about this concept of that question of 1.1. So it can be that there's a transaction on D or E that has to, everything that has to do with transaction number 1 and with those marks given has to do with A. 6 workers were employed in production in 2021 and 2022, and they are giving us comparative figures 2021 and 2022, so that later on the question we compare whether things increased, whether things decreased, whether that increased, whether this decreased. Now, those are free marks that you must take advantage of, because the examiners wants to mention, and if they are giving you 2 years like this, we will see subsequent years, you will see how it is done. Each of them worked 184 hours normal time during the year at 40 rand per hour. 1840 times 40 rand. 1840 times 40 rand. And then what happened? The overtime registered reflected a combined total of 230 hours worked at 1.6 times the normal hour. Now, each of them worked these hours, and there were, how many workers were there? Were 6 workers. So multiplied by 6 workers. Forget that, because many students will give that calculation and forget the number of employees that were there. Very, very important. Plus the overtime that was worked, which is 40 rand times 1.6 rate of the overtime times how many workers or overtime hours? 230 hours. times 230 hours. And then, is there any transaction? Production staff received a bonus, production bonus of 8% of the normal time wages. What is our normal time wages? Is this transaction, this first one and second one will give us 8% of what was calculated here, is that bonus. Let's see. Now we open up our calculator. Now you do this calculation as required, and it's going to give you max 1840 times 40 hours times number of employees were 6. Don't forget that. 441, did I check? 441 600 plus, because we did this first calculation, we want to do this one. And now this 441 600 is that one of the bonus plus. Remember, there was a bonus that was initiated in terms of normal time wages, and it was 8%. And when you look at the normal time wages, you like now 441 600 multiplied by 8%, which should be inclusive to be part of direct labor. Very important. Don't forget these concepts. Now plus that rate of 40 rand times 1.6 as a rate of those who made sacrifices to make overtime, to work overtime, and times to a number of hours that were worked by those employees, which was 230 hours, and we got 14,720. 14,720, and then plus that bonus of 8% of the normal wages of 441 600 multiplied by 8%, and you will get 35,328. And once you do this, and then you have all your full marks, because this 35 you must plus that overtime that was worked, which is 14,720 plus 441 600, which was wages for the year, and the total here you get that it's 491 684 648. Happy? Yes, that's it. Let's make this column look professional so that it entertains this as such. Choose this denominator as yes, correct. Now you're done with 1.2.1. Let's look at 1.2. Oh, is it 1.2.2? Let's look at because the first one was about, or it's 1.2.1 still with factory overhead cost. Let's look at factory overhead cost. Now you are given on the total on the answer sheet, you are given the before the correction, and let's look at what are the questions now. Because is factory overhead cost. The bookkeeper calculated the factory overhead cost as 541 600 as calculated. You've seen that. However, he made the following errors which must still be adjusted. He included the entire insurance expense of 32,500 to the factory overhead cost instead of only 60% of this expense. So 60% was supposed to formulate part, which is part of that. It's there. And he used the whole amount. And now it tells us that when you look at this answer sheet, let's look at the answer sheet. There is insurance now that we must calculate, which it says 60% was part of this 32,500 multiplied by 40%. Why 40%? 40% must be excluded because read the adjustment. The adjustment will tell you further why we exclude that. We just read that adjustment, and we take out 40%. Ask yourself, why are we taking out 40%, which is 13,000? Which is 13,000. And it must be subtracted. And then there's the next adjustment. The next adjustment is he allocated 54,000 to factory water and electricity using the ratio 3:2:2 for factory, sales, and office respectively. These expenses should have been split in the ratio 2:1:1. Now, he already allocated 54,000. So now we need to see this 54,000 originally. How was this 54,000? Let's say 54,000. We want to see how much before the ratio took place. And before the ratio took place, we know that 3/7 was already allocated. Y/7 is 3 plus 2 is 5 plus 2 is 7, and then that 7 becomes a denominator. So water and electricity for factory was 3/7, sales 2/7, and office respectively 2/7. So now to see how much was it before that allocation is times 7 divided by 3, because 3 was already allocated, times 7 divided by 3 months. 54, not 3 months, but in terms of that ratio, times 7 divided by 3, that was allocated. We get that it was 126,000. So 126,000 in essence was not supposed to be done in terms of 3/7. The correct coronation of that was that it was supposed, this expense should have been split in the ratio 2:1:1. So if it is 2:1:1, it means for factory is 2/4, sales 1/4, and office 1/4. Y4 is 2 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. Understand that denominator at all cost, how it works. It's very important. Some students, they don't understand these fractions, but it's very easy. You add denominator together and then you allocate pro rata as such. So now 126,000 was supposed to be like this. 126,000, because this is the 126,000 that we just calculated, equals to 126,000 multiplied by, do you agree that is 2/4? 2/4. Now, when you multiply this 126,000 times 2 divided by 4, 126,000 times 2 divided by 4, it's equals to, now it's the same as divide by 2 this amount, which is 63,000. Now, before you are carried away, I just explained this. I hope you just record it, and let me rather record this here so that you don't. Let me rather record these transactions here. Say command cut, command paste, and deal with water and electricity to say 63,000, which is what I just got now. Oh my gosh, let's record it in a correct, in a correct field. 63,000 minus what was paid because of the wrong factor, 54,000. You understand now? We calculated 54,000, and then you get that answer, 63,000 minus 54,000. 63 minus 54,000 is equals to 9,000. 9,000. We're happy with that. And then you get your total, which is equals to this plus this. Use your calculator, plus this, and then you will get your total as 537 600. We're happy with that. Now, let's move to the next one, which has to do with total cost of production. Total cost of production is always simple. What is our cost of production? Direct material, direct labor, and overheads. So we already done that. So to arrive at that calculation, it's very easy because now you don't want to waste time further. I wasted time because I was explaining to you, because you must make us proud about this exam. Now direct material is 652,800. 652,800 plus direct labor. You don't have to look at the question, but rather the answer. 491,648 plus manufacturing overheads, factory overheads, which is 537. Let me make that coronation of closing balance nicely. Yes. And you have this last one, which we just got, 537, 600. And when you add them together, that is your answer. And you don't have to waste time. You have to do it and get these marks as quickly as you can. 800 plus, you can use your calculator. 491,648 plus 537, 600. So 1682 048. Yes. Okay. And now you have your total cost of production. Let's look at 1.2.2. What was the question? 1.2.2, we look at Annie is concerned that fixed costs increased to 806,400. Explain why she should not be concerned. Provide 2 points. Quote figures. Now, it's very important when you look at this, because when you quote figures, that's when you use these comparative figures I was talking about, where you check from 2022, 2021, economies of scale. That's the first thing you check, because look at the production. Units produced has increased. And when you answer this, you just start by the production. Point one. Let's look at the product, and they want you to mention that increase, to say number of units produced and sold, units produced and sold increased, and that increased, you must just show with calculations to say, okay, it increased. You look at them to say, okay, where is it? 6,400 minus 5,250. And you write that 6,400 on your calculator quickly, minus 5,250. 5,250. And you have 1,150. And you say, you tell the examiner, by 1,150. Maybe show the examiner how you did it, to say, you can if you like. If you don't like, don't do it. To say 6,400 minus 5,250. Which it happened by 6,400 minus 5,250. And that's what you got. And also you can show in terms of what was the percentage. And then you divide that by 5,250. And then you show the examiner that, okay, it's 21.9%. 0.9%. And then another thing that you can look at as per point 2, maybe you can look at fixed costs. let's look at what happened to fixed costs was 151, and then you tell the examiner also about fixed costs to say fixed costs decreased by how much. Those are the very important things that you must show, because some students don't know how to get these marks. Comparative figures are given for these reasons, to compare, to say fixed costs per unit. Let's look at in terms of per unit. Let's look at, because they want you to mention also that you are talking about fixed costs per unit decreased by, let's look at it in terms of units, decreased by, you can calculate that. Here it is, it was 151 minus 126 equals to 25. Decreased by 25. Mention on the bracket, so that you take advantage of those that won't mention on the bracket. 151 minus 126. 151 minus 126. That was that. Or what was the percentage of that divided by 151? That last year rate, which it was 1.6%. 16.5%. Times 100. Times 100, please. Times 100, so that you understand 16.6%. And then you can write that 16.6%. And you've shown the examiners. You took that 4 marks and you carry on to 1.2.3. Comment on whether the production staff deserves the production bonus that they received. Provide 3 points. When you provide these points, you also look at comparative figures, year 1 and year 2. And you go back and look at direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead, and see if they increased or decreased. And that will be the indication of whether or not bonus. Show with calculations, quote figures whenever you are given comparative figures. Very, very important. And that's how you're going to take advantage of marks. So such question, you look at such things. Now, let's start with, because now this question is comment on whether the production staff deserves. Point 1, let's look at if the production staff deserves. We look at, let's start with the number of units produced, because this same one that you used here, that same point is also the point that you can use here, produced and sold. You see, it increased. Units produced and sold increased by 150 or by 21.9%. Now you mention it in terms of percentage. Increased by 21.9%. Let's look at other things that are given. Break-even point. Let's look at break-even point. 692. Break-even point decreased, showing that they are making a profit. Break-even point decreased by, let's look how it decreased, 6954 minus 6156. 798. 798, or you can put the percentage there to say which that 798 is a percentage. In terms of percentage, you must divide it by those units last year, which is 6954 units, and it was 11.5%. 11.5%. That's another point that you can mention. Let's look if the profit this year compared to last year, did it increase? Did it decrease? We cannot, under no circumstances, that the profit decreased and we pay bonuses. It can't make sense. Let's look at that profit. Let's look at the selling price last year, minus 251 compared to, and you can see the prices increased compared to this year. Variable costs decreased, which is very, very good. Let's do this separately quickly. Also, you can show by saying there was a profit of, you mentioned the amount, the profit of as compared to last year, and that profit of, we can just quickly calculate it here, maybe underneath, to say last year it was 365 minus variable cost 251, which is equals to, that was last year, 365 minus 251, which is gross profit is 114. And let's look at this calculation for this year, which is 375 minus 244. So this is how they want you to get to free marks, 375, and you just use a common sense, comparing last year and this year, and you can see 131. So in terms of units, you see, there was a profit of 131 units compared to last year, 114 units. You mentioned that, and you're gonna get maximum marks. One last point that you must also mention is about variable costs. Variable costs. You can even write variable costs. What about variable costs? If they decrease, we can pay bonuses. No, variable costs, remember, expenses, and if they go higher and higher, how can we pay bonuses? So it makes sense for this company to pay bonuses because everything was at their advantage. They won, they won in terms of profits. So let's give our employees, they work hard, they safeguard, they make sure that controls are in place, safeguarded. Remember, there are companies that the controls are weak, and we know when controls are weak, what happens. So we look at, again, variable costs. Hence I'm saying variable costs, what happened to variable costs? 244, 251. Variable costs decreased. Imagine, variable costs decreased by, let's calculate by how much as a figure. You can do that. Now you follow this sequence that we're doing. You can see how these things are calculated. You look at the variable costs, 251 minus 244. As a separate component, you see now 7. Increased by 7 units. By 7 units. You can show them also, if you like, to say last year was 251 compared to this year as 244. And you can also show them in terms of percentage by saying divide by 251. And that increased by times 100 is 2.8%. And that is basically how you do these things. And that is basically how the examiners expect you to expect your answer. They are expecting your suggested solution to be in this nature. Understand what you're doing there. Understand direct material, direct labor, fixed overheads, because it's about comparing. To say it was increased, to say it decreased, that's your free mark. Take advantage of that free mark. Sometimes you didn't have time to make all these calculations, and the examiner will appreciate that you did mention that it increased from which year to, from one year to another. Last question. 1.2.4, Annie wants to improve her profit by 50,000 during the next financial year while maintaining costs. Calculate the additional units that must be produced to achieve this target. And now when you look at this, fixed cost of 50,000 is given as a profit. And now you say, okay, I know this formula where I have to do break-even point, where it's fixed costs over gross profit per unit, or marginal income per unit, gross profit per unit, right? Now, break-even point, we have that 50,000, which is given already, and you don't have to waste time. 50,000 divided by what is my gross profit, which we just did calculate that, to say but I can do it again to say sales minus variable costs, selling price per unit minus variable cost per unit, which is 375 minus 244. Are we together? 375 minus 244. And now when you do that calculation, you're going to say 50,000 divided by what you're going to get there. 375 minus 244 is equals to 131. 382, which is equals to 382. So 382 units must be produced to make a profit of 50,000. This is the answer to this solution. I hope to see you in the next tutorial.